Hey, welcome back to a new installment of the Wide Right Podcast. Manny Navarro here from The Athletic, joined once again by Carlos Ledo of the MIA All Day Pod. It is Wednesday, November 27th, right around 9 a.m. as Carlos is
Yeah.
somewhere in the Keys, right? For Thanksgiving, day before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, man. And you're getting me up early for a podcast. I should be up early fishing, but not doing that today. Not in the morning anyway. But
I
yeah, thanks. Thanks for getting me up on Thanksgiving early in the morning, Florida Keys, when I should be relaxing. Now I gotta get up and do this podcast. But hey, it's Hurricanes football, so what are we gonna do? You gotta do what you gotta do, and it's a good time to be alive.
Well, it's the very least that my free lunch can get you, right? I mean, you did win the bet to Flanagan's because unfortunately Wake Forest decided to crap the bed over the last 8 minutes of the game. But I thought my prediction of it being, you pulling your hair out in the fourth quarter was accurate. But you were also accurate in predicting Miami covering the 24-point spread with those late touchdowns.
Well, listen, I went from pulling my hair to looking at the menu and saying, "What am I going to order at Flanagan's?" I was like, "Hey, baby, all right, look at this swinging momentum," and it's going to be one of the best lunches I've ever had in my life, just because of the way they came back and took over that game late in the fourth quarter. So you know what? And to be petty, and you tweeted it, I decided to go with your favorite order as what I'm going to order when I go to Flanagan's as a result.
You won the bet, so I got to pay up. It's the way this operates. I always
So
pay on my bets.
only one of us is going to have Dolphin Francais.
Yeah, I think I'm probably gonna go with the cheap $6 lunch to keep things affordable for me here. Um, Well, listen, Miami last night found out it was number six in the latest college football playoff rankings following that win over Wake Forest, which sets them up perfectly going into Syracuse this week, 3:30 kickoff on Saturday. Miami wins. I don't think it matters anymore whether or not they win the ACC championship, Carlos, because it was upset Saturday last weekend. I showed you one of my bet slips for last weekend. I didn't win the bet. All four of the games I think I only won one
Yeah.
of them. But regardless, I went 8-1 overall with my picks. Not against the spread. That would be ridiculous. I went 8-1 with my picks for the Athletic, my oddly specific predictions. I did nail the Florida upset of Ole Miss, which was one of three huge upsets on the day for the SEC. You had Texas A&M losing at Auburn in the nightcap, and then Alabama, who everybody was just penciling in as making the playoff, they lose 24-3 at Oklahoma. So that's opened the door here for as many as three ACC teams potentially to get into the playoff now. It made a wild circus of really what I thought everybody was just saying. Well, it'd be five SEC teams, four Big Ten teams, and then the ACC champ, Big 12 champ, and Boise State, assuming they're the Group of Five champion. But things have changed drastically, which I think helps the Miami Hurricanes quite a bit because while we'll sit here and say the SEC isn't what it used to be, I certainly would prefer Miami if they get into the playoff not to have to play Ole Miss, Alabama, and Ohio State on the way to a national championship.
Yeah, absolutely. But either way, I mean, at this point, having seen what this team is throughout the course of the season, having seen them lose to Georgia Tech, any opponent in the playoff is going to be difficult, right? Um, and it may be even better for them to play a better opponent because they tend to play down to the competition. So let's see what happens. It's just at this point it's get in and let's see what happens. Let's roll the dice. We've probably got the best player in the field with Cam Ward every time you step on the field, and then we'll see what happens. Anything can happen when you have a quarterback like that in a season like this. But of course, the defense is a concern. But we'll see, man. Hey, chances are, even if they lose in the ACC title game, they might still get in. I doubt it, just because the committee is who the committee is, and people hate Miami. So I'd rather not leave it in their hands. So you take care of business against Syracuse, and then take care of business in the ACC title game.
Yeah, SMU punched their ticket, so that would be the opponent if Miami beats Syracuse. So you will have a reunion of former Hurricane offensive coordinator and a bunch of players that played for Miami, including Brashard Smith, Jafari Harvey, and others. Playing the Hurricanes if Miami can get the job done on Saturday. We'll get into the Syracuse game. We'll get into your mailbag questions in a minute, but let's recap what happened against Wake Forest, Carlos, because as I correctly forecasted, it was a tight football game going into the fourth quarter. Miami's offense once again struggling to score points, the same way they did against Georgia Tech. They scored on the opening drive, got a field goal to make it 10-7. And then, get a pick six to make it 17-7, give up a kickoff return for a touchdown, but it's 20-14 at the half. And in the third quarter, really couldn't get scoring either. The offense just kept struggling. Xavier Restrepo had a fumble. Rough day. Ultimately, Carlos, the defense is what saved the day, which I think is obviously an encouraging sign for this program, considering the way the defense had played. Miami only allowed one pass completion in the second half for 13 yards, and that was basically in garbage time. So they got to the quarterback 5 times for sacks. They had one sack between their two previous games. So you saw the resurgence of the pass rush. What was your biggest takeaway from the victory over Wake Forest?
To me, it was the defense adjusting after the opening series, and not giving up big plays throughout the rest of the game. After that kickoff return for a touchdown, at that point, it was pretty much the defense locking things down. There was no more scoring from Wake Forest. Um, it's to me, it's a situation where that could have steamrolled into something like a Cal game. It could have steamrolled into Virginia Tech or what we saw against Georgia Tech, and just not been able to sort of plug the gap and plug the hole and keep putting pressure on the offense. What ended up happening is it allowed, as I fall from the screen here. Don't worry, guys, I'm safe. That was just my phone falling down. I'm totally okay. Uh, what it allowed the offense to do was finally get its legs, right? Because the defense was so stout, it allowed the offense to get enough reps to get going. And that's what we've talked about with Cam Ward. Like he can go cold for a while. Sometimes that offense can go cold. But it's like Jordan, you give him enough shot attempts, eventually you're going to score points. So to me, the big takeaway was that defense holding the fort, and then the offense finally working through these issues and getting into a rhythm and scoring points. And it's always good to see a pick six. You don't see those very often.
Yeah, Mish Powell made a terrific play, and as I wrote on Twitter, made earned his money, his NIL money, right, for that pick six. It really changed the momentum of the game. He jumped in front of a screen pass, made a difficult catch. It's not an easy catch to make with the quarterback basically just a few yards away from you, and you're rushing the quarterback. So a great job to just hold on to the football and then to run it back. Had a nice entertaining dance in the end zone. I forget the name of that dance. Is it the river something or other? He did some sort of
Yeah, the
Irish,
river dance.
the river dance.
I,
Yeah. So
I call it the Flanagans.
you call it the Flanagans, right? Ironically enough, the big thing in this
I
game,
call it I call
Carlos.
it the Jules meal deal.
The big thing in this game, Carlos, when you look at what Miami did differently, number one, Tyler Barron did not start this game. He was the big offseason acquisition. We've talked about it quite a bit on the show, how he hadn't really been doing much for the Hurricanes. Really cost them badly against Georgia Tech as a starting edge rusher in terms of just not fitting the scheme, setting the edge, trying to go inside, allowing runs to bounce outside. Um, Lance Guidry decided to move Akeem Mesidor, who's been playing inside most of the season, out into his spot. And I thought that was just a brilliant move to sort of change the entire complexion of the game. Jalen Alderman started at linebacker. So did Wesley Bissainthe and Francisco Mainoa. He went with the basic 4-3 front in this game. Got Simeon Barrow out there with CJ Clark. CJ Clark started the game, played really, really well, I thought. Miami went from being a team that wanted to rush the quarterback to, hey, we've got to stop the run first. And yes, they gave up some big runs early in that game, but I think as the game went on, you could see that they were getting better and better at stopping it. And that's really going to be the key this week against Syracuse, in my opinion. But the move to bench Barron, I think, was the right decision. And I like the way that Miami played defense in this last game in the second half.
Yeah, I think what Lance Guidry figured out was, listen, it's better for us to go a little bit bigger up front, and use Barron, guys like that, or edge rushers in pass rush situations to make them specialists as opposed to, full-time defensive end. And it paid off. And you've got a bigger guy in Mesidor setting the edge, and making sure that you control the line of scrimmage. Before the game, I talked about, some of the three keys that I thought would be important for the Hurricanes to win and dominate. And one of them was to dominate the line of scrimmage on both sides. And they rushed for 228 yards, and had 5 sacks, and they only gave up 94 yards rushing and 1 sack against Wake Forest. So mission accomplished there. And I think seeing the running game get going, which is important on offense, but also seeing this defense dominate and stop the run was very important. I also felt they needed to stop Wake Forest on third downs and he converts some third downs uh, because they were the number one team in the country on third down, except for that game against Georgia Tech, but they were just atrocious on third down. They couldn't convert a first. But they were 7 on 12, 7 out of 12 this game. They held Wake to 6 out of 16 on third and fourth downs. And I thought the other thing they needed to do was not get fooled uh, and be disciplined and be fundamentally sound. They got fooled early on in the game with the play action from Wake Forest and the opening touchdown. But after that, they settled down. So to me, it was an encouraging sign to see that Lance decided to make some changes, make some adjustments, not just with personnel, but the way he played the scheme with that 4-3 look. So it shows that he's open to doing different things and helping put his players in the best position possible, which is you want now, finishing the season, going into the final game, ACC title game, the playoffs will be on.
Yep. 3 snaps total for Tyler Barron. You saw a lot of freshmen get into this game. Raul Aguirre, who's a second-year guy. Zaquan Patterson, true freshman, played 13 snaps. Malik Bryant played 13 snaps. Ahmad Moten, who's a third-year guy, got a lot of work at that nose tackle position. They went bigger,
He
and
played
I think,
well.
yeah, I think it's going to be important against Syracuse. And you say to yourself, well, Manny, why are you saying that? Syracuse has the number one, passing yardage uh, quarterback in college football at the FBS level. Let me throw some interesting numbers to you in terms of Syracuse, and we'll get into that a little bit as well here. What's gotten Syracuse beat this year, and Syracuse is 8-3 now, by the way. So this is a good football team that Miami is playing, even though they lost that game ugly to Pittsburgh. It was 5 turnovers that ultimately doomed them in that game. Otherwise, they've been pretty good most of this season. What got Syracuse beat this year are turnovers and an inability to run the football. And their 3 losses this year, the Orange have turned it over 8 times and averaged only 23.7 yards rushing in those losses. In their 8 wins, they committed 6 turnovers total, averaged over 118 yards rushing. So they're not going to run the football a ton. Kyle McCord is going to throw it a lot. But if you can make them one-dimensional and really shut down their running game, Carlos, you can force Kyle McCord into mistakes. And that's what Miami has to do this week as a defense.
Yeah, and he's going to make mistakes. He's got 12 interceptions on the season. You saw that game against Pitt, how he turned the ball over like crazy. The other thing is Pitt's defense doesn't stop the run well. And in their 3 losses, the game against Stanford and the game against Boston College, they gave up 178, I think, rushing to Stanford, and they gave
Syracuse,
300
you're talking
yards.
about because you mentioned Pitt, but go
Yeah,
ahead, Syracuse.
I was sorry, right. Sorry. Syracuse gave up over 178 yards, almost 200 yards rushing to Stanford, and they gave up over 300 yards rushing to Boston College. So there's an opportunity for the Hurricanes to run the football here. They gave up on defense. Syracuse gave up 5 yards a carry. So if this is a game where you've been prepared for it all season long, where now you maybe want to try and limit the opponent's possessions, right? So now you want to grind it out. You want to make it physical on both sides. You want to stop the run on their side, force them to throw the football, and then you want to just ground and pound them all the way down the field and try and exert control physically of this football game as much as you can. And I think the opportunity's there.
Yeah, Syracuse ranks 45th in the country in pass defense, Carlos. They're not terrible in terms of pass defensive numbers. Only 203 yards a game. You mentioned the run defense, and really that's their Achilles heel. So this is an important game for Miami to come out and be balanced. I know Cam Ward and Kyle McCord are number one and number two in passing yardage, but Miami's pass defense ranks 35th in terms of yards per game. So I make this weekly pick every single week where I call it stat stuffers, where I pick who's going to lead all of FBS in passing, rushing, and receiving. I've hit it 5 times this year in terms of either a passer, leading receiver, or rusher, which is frankly really hard to do. But I didn't go with either one of those guys because, as you said, I think this game's going to be about balance and which team is the most balanced on offense and which defense can take away the football and take away opportunities, like most games are. But in particular, when you've got 2 quarterbacks that can light up the scoreboard, it's more about how do you help those guys out and hurt them. And so that's going to be the key for me in this game. I got Miami winning by a field goal. What is your prediction for the game, Carlos?
Um, yeah, I think it'll be a one-score game. I think it's going to be tight. I think if they come into this game with a game plan on offense of, like you said, being balanced and really relying on that running game, taking pressure off Cam Ward and letting him go off play action, like I said, we should have done from the start of the season. Um, I think they can win this game handily and not turn this into a PP measuring contest. Hey, who's going to throw for more yards, right? Shannon
Yep.
Dawson comes in there and says, "We got to get you the Heisman on this last game, right? Or we gotta make sure that you show how much better you are than Kyle McCord this game. Cam, let's throw it 50 times a game." Come in with a good plan, be balanced, take your shots when you need to take them. Because the other thing that I think is necessary coming down the stretch here is for Cam Ward to be efficient with the football and be smart with it, right? Stop making bad decisions. Take what's there. Because to win a national championship and to go beyond that first round of the playoffs, to even win the ACC title game, you're going to have to take what the defense gives you, humble yourself a little bit. I know you've got the gunslinger mentality, and that's worked out for a lot of the season, but there's going to be opportunities for you where you may want to press that button and say, "Hey, let's go turbo mode here," and it's better to just check it down and live to play another play. I think that's the key.
Yeah, and you saw Cam Ward, what happened to him when he tried to force it on the shovel pass, through his seventh interception of the season. Now, I don't totally fault him. I think Elijah Royal kind of gave up on that play, stopped running, and just allowed the pass to sail right past him.
Mm-hmm.
Once your quarterback lets the football go, you've got to do everything you can not to just let it fall incomplete, especially when he's throwing it in the middle of the defense. But still, there were less. It felt like early on in that game there were more Tecmo Bowl moments in the early part of it, and then he kind of buckled down and stopped playing Tecmo Bowl as the game went on, and that's the guy we need to see because if you think about it, the field goal
And that's when
drive,
the offense got going.
yeah, and the offense got going when they decided to run the football and have balance. But what I was going to say is when you think about that second drive where Miami ended up settling for the field goal against Wake Forest, Cam had I think it was Mark Walton open in the flat and decided, no, I don't want a guy to catch the ball within the 5 yard line and maybe dive into the end zone. I want to make a highlight reel pass. And what ends up happening is and it almost intercepted. The next play, you get a penalty that kills that. Again, we talked about this on the previous episodes. If Cam Ward can just avoid those moments of, hey, I need to shine and get the job done, then Miami probably doesn't struggle at all against Wake Forest.
Yeah, and Cam's defense, had he thrown to Mark Walton, that would have probably been a penalty because he's out of eligibility. But still,
I mean, not
it
Mark
was.
Walton, Mark Fletcher. You're right. I'm the
I got you. I got
dumbass. Yes, Mark
you.
Fletcher.
No, 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 no. Sorry. Listen, I called Syracuse Pitt. I'm barely awake. We're rolling that. Listen, when you hit your mid forties, when you hit your mid forties and the caffeine intake isn't what it should be, and it's definitely not for Manny because he's drinking Dunkin' Donuts, and
I
that's agua
I
sucia. That
I
does nothing for
I
anybody.
needed some level of caffeine in my body.
Yeah, yeah. Listen, you're better off just drinking water. I think it'll be a little bit more caffeinated than that crap. But yeah, I mean that's exactly right. You know, he's got to make this. He's got to make this a smart play. Sometimes the best play is the easy play, man. The play that doesn't seem like it's a huge highlight reel play is going to keep drives alive. It's going to score more points. It's going to get you down the field, like you saw in the second half. And he's seen it. And the problem is, it's been proven to him over time in games when he decides not to take chances and he just works his way down the field methodically. He doesn't make mistakes. They score more points, and the offense is more efficient. And that's something that needs to be coached. And I think I put that a little bit on Shannon Dawson. Shocker.
Yeah. What did you think of the game Dawson called overall on offense? You had complimented him really, really well, and people were shocked last week when you said what you said. What did you think of the game he called?
Well, he came in, like I said, he comes in with a good plan to start, right? His
Hmm.
first 10, 15, 20 scripted plays generally are good, and he doesn't normally adapt well to change. You saw again the offense hits a lull, and then it takes a little bit of something special happening to get them going and get them rolling. To me, Shannon Dawson is who he is. He's never changed all season. He hasn't changed who he was last season. It's all dependent upon Cam Ward and how Cam Ward is playing that day. It's not inventive. It's not, very out of the box. Sometimes you don't need to be when you have horses on offense, but when you see your offense struggling, you got to find opportunities to get the ball into your playmakers' hands and do that through scheme. So, I mean, I thought he was okay, and that's generally what Shannon Dawson is. He's not a bad offensive coordinator. He's just okay, and that's to me sometimes that's enough when you've got enough horses. I just don't think in a situation where you get into a game against a team like in Ohio State, uh, Texas, whoever it may be, uh, and they come at you with a great scheme and they have a great offense that can match you score for score, you're going to have to do something to make sure you scheme up your offense like Rhett Lashley tends to do and get points on the board no matter what and get your playmakers the ball.
All right. I want to shift the conversation to the mailbag in a minute, but I decided, remember the blind resume thing that we did a couple weeks ago? Um,
Yes.
All right. So what I did this week for fun, because people were debating playoff spots and who deserves spots, is I went and I looked at scoring offense, scoring defense, and scoring differential for all the playoff contenders, based on a very important stat versus FBS winning teams, meaning how do you perform against bowl eligible teams, essentially, because at this point, everybody who is an FBS winning team has at least 6 wins. There's only 1 week of the regular season left. So let's just go through this really quickly. These are the Big Ten teams, the four Big Ten teams: Oregon, Ohio State, Indiana, and Penn State. Um, I'm not going to tell you which one is which, but this team has only played 4 games against FBS winning teams. They are eighth in scoring offense, 36.3 points per game, 22nd in scoring defense with a scoring differential of 13 and a half points. If you had to guess who that is, of the four Big Ten teams, which team do you think defines that profile?
Indiana.
That would be number one, Oregon. They've only played four
Wow.
games against teams with winning records: Boise State, Ohio State, Illinois, and Michigan. And their scoring differential in those games is 13 and a half points. Um, Not extremely dominant, but they're the number one team in the country. There is another team whose scoring differential is bigger of the remaining three Big Ten teams. Who do you think that is?
Ohio State.
That's correct. Ohio State, 16-point differential. They're 5-1 in those 6 games versus FBS winning opponents. 16th, I'm sorry, fourth in scoring defense against FBS winning opponents. 16.3 points per game allowed. They're scoring 32 points in those games, which makes me feel like when I read those numbers, Carlos, that Ohio State is probably the best of those four Big Ten teams. Correct or incorrect?
Except for the fact that they lost Oregon.
Which they did, but by 1 point. But I would say, based on their body of work, the team that impresses me
Yeah.
the most, because they're 5-1 against 6 FBS winning teams. They've played Marshall, who's I think leading the Sun Belt, Iowa, Oregon, Nebraska, Penn State, and Indiana. Um, Indiana's point differential in their 4 games against FBS winning opponents is 11.2. And then Penn State is only 9.9, but they've played 7 games against teams with FBS winning records. So they're a little bit more battle tested. I know some people have said, why does Penn State get so much respect? Well, they're 6-1 against FBS winning teams.
Yeah. They've done a good job this year. And I think, as shady as Oregon's resume is, the fact that Ohio State keeps winning and keeps impressing boosts their resume because of the fact that that's probably, if you could point to maybe the best win of the season for a college football team, that might be it.
Yep. Couple more teams I wanted to go through here because again, this is sort of a fun discussion. Miami is in the hunt to make the playoffs, and if they lose Saturday, people will say, "Well, do the Canes deserve an opportunity to still make it as an at-large at 10-2?" That's why I'm going over these blind resumes. Let's go over to the SEC because that is the next major conference, right? And they've got all these teams that want to be contenders. You have Texas, you have Georgia, you have Tennessee, Alabama, Ole Miss, and Texas A&M. Those are the 6 profiles that I broke down here. I'm gonna just read you numbers. You guess who I'm talking about. This team
Okay.
has played 8 games against FBS winning teams. They are ninth in scoring offense, 35.5 points per game, and first on defense, 12.9 points allowed per game against these FBS winning teams. That is an SEC leading 22.6 point differential.
Georgia.
That's Texas, right?
That was
Texas,
that's
who's
my other guess. Yep.
Yeah, Texas, who is number 3 in the country, they are 7-1 against FBS winning teams. So when people question Texas and say, "Oh, why is Texas third? They don't have any wins over ranked opponents." I give you that number, and what's your reaction?
They've got a hell of a resume. I mean, you compare that to what we were just talking about with the Big Ten teams. I think that you kind of like a Penn State and kind of like Ohio State. They've taken care of business when it counts.
Yep. All right, I'm going to give you another resume of the remaining teams. That's Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama, Ole Miss, and Texas A&M. I want you to guess who this resume is. All right. This team has played 5 games against FBS winning teams. They are 78th in scoring offense, 20.5 points per game, and they're 10th in scoring defense, 19.8 points per game. That's only a differential of zero point 0.7, and yet they're in the playoff conversation. Which team am I talking about?
Alabama.
That's Tennessee, who is actually
Ooh.
in the field at the moment, based on the ranking, because they've only got 2 losses. But again, just 5 games against FBS winning teams with a 1 point scoring differential. What does that say to you when I reach you that number? Is that startling? Is it surprising at all to you?
Not it's a little shocking because of you think Tennessee, especially with Josh, since Josh Heupel's been there, and you think high-powered offense, and they've been putting up points. So that offensive number to me is shocking.
Yep.
So yeah, it's a little disturbing, and to me, it's one of those numbers where if they to land in the SEC title game, or they play in the playoff, they might get smoked.
All right, the 4 remaining SEC teams, I want you to put them in order for me. Georgia, Alabama, Ole Miss, and Texas A&M. If you had to guess what their order is in scoring differential, what do you think you'd come up with?
Probably Ole Miss number one, A&M two, Georgia three, and then Bama four.
Ole Miss is one. That is correct. They're beating FBS winning teams by 16.4 points per game. They've played 7 games. Alabama is second. They have 9 games. Alabama has had 9 games against FBS winning opponents. So when you talk about strong resume and why they're sitting at 13 and why they have a chance to still make the playoffs with 3 losses, 9 games, 14.2 points per game differential, ninth ranked scoring defense. Then you have Georgia, 8.1 points per game. They are 14th in defense. And then coming in the rear is Texas A&M, with only a
Oh,
5 point
oh,
scoring
oh, Manny,
differential.
Manny, Manny, watch your words. What are we doing here?
But listen, when I give you those resumes, right now people are saying there's only going to be 3 SEC teams that likely get in into the dance. Which of those teams blows you away? Are there any that you think are more deserving than others now that I've gone through this?
Uh, I don't know. Let's now you've got me thinking about who wants to sneak in the back door. It's to me, it's tough. Alabama's got a really good resume, but 3 losses are 3 losses, and one of those happens to be Ben. So that to me is sort of disqualifies. They also had another bad loss this past weekend, so I don't think Alabama's it gets in. I don't think they should get in, right? Georgia to me is proven and tested. They've got a couple losses. Or at least one loss they shouldn't have, but they've got a great win against Texas. I think that gets them in. Um, yeah, and A&M to me is, it's a lot is dependent on that Texas game. If they beat Texas, to me, then they probably have a shot of getting in. They should get in, but I don't think they will.
All right, let's move to the Big 12 quickly here. 4 teams all sitting at 6-2 going in this week. You have a potential, I think, of 256 different combinations of teams that can play in the Big 12 championship. At this point, there's even a chance, Carlos, that you won't even get a Big 12 champion into the field because let's face it, if Tulane wins their conference, and Boise State wins their conference, those could be the other 2 conference champs that get in if they're ranked higher than whoever the Big 12 champion is at this point. So it's very sort of close call here of what's going to happen. But when people talk about Big 12, where do those teams rank? I got Iowa State, Arizona State, Colorado, and Kansas all have an opportunity to get to the Big 12 championship game with wins and a little bit of help in terms of tiebreakers. Of those 4 teams, let's rank them in order. Which ones do you think have the best scoring differential against FBS winning teams?
Uh, Scoring differential, let's say Arizona State,
They're third. Go ahead.
Colorado,
They are second.
and number one is what? Kansas,
You have Kansas State or Iowa State. Farmageddon this
Kansas
week.
State. Sorry, Kansas State.
Incorrect. Iowa State
Yes, Iowa
has the
State. Look
best
at that.
resume of the Big 12. 15.8 scoring differential in 5 games against FBS winning teams. Really, their defense is what is their calling card. Only 17.2 points per game. They're fifth best. in terms of scoring differential against FBS winning teams. Kansas State is minus a half a point, which is why they're last. Colorado is only 4 points, and Arizona State is 2.5. So I don't want to hear this argument anymore of is the Big 12 as good as the ACC? Because when you look at the ACC resumes, Carlos, which is how we're going to wrap up this conversation, Miami right now, what do you think is their scoring differential against FBS opponents?
Uh, 15.
Good guess. It's 14 points. They have the number one scoring offense against FBS winning teams, averaging 43 points per game against FBS winning teams. They're allowing 29 points a game, which ranks them 61st. SMU's point differential is 10.4 points per game. They are fourth offensively with 38 points a game against FBS winning teams and 54th on defense, so slightly better than Miami against FBS winning teams. The one that was an eye opener for me when I broke this down was Clemson. Clemson, Carlos, has only played 3 games against FBS winning teams, and their scoring differential minus 13.
Wow.
They rank 113th in scoring offense, 16 points per game, giving up 29 points a game, tied with Miami. So their defense just as bad as the Hurricanes against FBS winning opponents. What say you after this long conversation? I can give you Notre Dame and Boise State if you're interested. Notre Dame, 18 and a half point scoring differential, 19th in scoring offense, second in scoring defense. Al Golden scoring defense is elite. They've played 7 opponents with FBS winning records, and then Boise State's played 5 games against FBS teams with winning records. They are third on offense, 71st on defense. Their scoring differential is 11 points. So now that we've surmised all of this, you've looked at the FBS power rankings. Do they look accurate to you? Do you agree a little bit more with the resumes and the rankings as they are, or do you disagree with anything? What's your overall takeaway now that we've covered kind of covered all this?
I think it's shed some light on why some teams are still being considered when you would think they should be dropped out of consideration, dropped out of the rankings, and not even be in the conversation. But it also shows that some teams are undercover frauds and they're being boosted by their conference and they're being boosted by their reputation. And not enough teams are getting respect from the other conferences, like specifically SMU's not getting talked about enough. I think they're a really good football team. And so the Hurricanes, they get disrespected because they tend to say that they haven't beaten anybody all year, and it's all Cam Ward driven. But they're a good football team. Listen, if this defense can get it going and settle down, I think that team has as good a chance as anybody to win the national championship. And I think SMU can also make noise in the playoff and maybe win a game if they get in there because they got a really good defense and a really good running game. So it's not to me like there's one dominant conference this year that deserves to get everybody in, 6, 7 teams in, like people could try to do with the SEC and the Big Ten. I think there's more parity across college football now in the bigger conferences than there has been in a long time.
Yeah, I hope people enjoyed this segment. I know numbers sometimes can get boring, but when you get to this point of the season and you have arguments in terms of, who deserves to get in and who doesn't, I hope we shed a little bit of light on, what winning football, how you do when you're really challenged. And I hope Miami fans realize, hey, you do have a pretty good football team, as you said, because you're 5-1 against FBS winning teams. Georgia Tech is a good team. They're winning with their quarterback unable to throw the football. They're playing a freshman essentially out there to throw the football when they need to throw. And
Yeah,
they
they're
and
they're, they're winning with duct tape and Vicks vapor rub.
but that's a good job that Brent Key deserves credit for, and yes, they've got Georgia this week and they're probably going to lose against their rival yet again. But look, if they play Georgia tough at this point, I don't think any of us would be shocked, right? If they play Georgia tough,
Or if they
that
beat them.
or if they beat them, what does that say? It says, hey, maybe Miami does have a chance to do something right in the college football playoff this year. We will see. Ultimately, it comes down to matchups and how teams match up on the field X's and O's wise with those opponents. But I thought this made Miami look pretty good. And when they say, hey, they're sixth in the country, They probably are. I think Notre Dame is a top five worthy team, the way that they've been playing, especially on defense. I think Ohio State is probably the best team in the country, if you were to ask me. I think Texas probably deserves more credit than they're getting, just because they haven't necessarily beaten a ranked opponent. They've still beaten, had 8 games against FBS winning teams. Um, Georgia's still going to be a player. Alabama, if they sneak in, I'm not going to feel bad if Alabama makes it as a three-loss team because their resume is good. They've played 9 teams with winning records, and their scoring differential is even with Miami. They're 14 points. So I think what this all tells me is Miami is right there, and they have an opportunity to do something. You are not going into a playoff field, assuming you make it and you take care of business against Syracuse. You're not entering a field that you don't belong in.
Yep, absolutely. And to your point, we don't know who's going to come strong down the stretch and try and sneak in that back door, but somebody will.
Somebody, somebody will. You love the backdoor conversation, Carlos. All right.
That's the only place I can get it.
Oh God. Oh God. All right. Let's go.
I never attended a day party.
Let's get into the mailbag questions. We're going to start with Columbus Kane, frequent listener and contributor to our mailbag. Says, why do we not ever
And one of
see
my three loyal fans.
one of your 3 loyal fans, correct? He says, why do we not ever see ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips on ESPN fighting for his members like we see uh, Greg Sankey with the SEC? He called him Stanky, by the way. I think he's done an awful job running the conference. Speaking of Phillips, he's costing his members. Um, do you have an opinion on this, Carlos? Do you think that's the case?
I think some guys prefer to be out in front of the camera, making noise, while others try to do things behind the scenes. I think Phillips is probably one of those behind the scenes guys. He also doesn't have a lot of moves available to him at this point. The Big Ten and the SEC have all the leverage. He's trying to figure out a way to do what's best for his conference. He did that quietly by adding Cal and Stanford. He's probably looking at doing some other things. We just don't know what he's thinking. Right now, there's not many chess moves that he can make at this point. But I'm pretty sure that if there's one available that stops him from, or stops the conference from losing teams like Florida State or Clemson, which I don't think anybody wants Florida State right now. He'll make those moves. I think maybe Florida State having a horrible year this year helps them in terms of keeping the conference together. And Clemson being down the last couple of years maybe helps a little bit as well, although they've had a great run over the last 10, 15 years. But to me, he's probably doing stuff behind the scenes. He's just a quiet guy. He's not a loud, bodacious kind of gregarious guy like the SEC conference commission.
I got a chance to sit down with Phillips when I went to Charlotte for the ACC football meetings, and got to tell you, super nice guy. Sat there and had a long conversation with me and Brendan Marks, who covers North Carolina and basketball for the Athletic, and I kind of represented the football side, and very honest and upfront about a lot of things that he will not talk about publicly. And all I can say is he cares. This is his job, and he wants the ACC to be respected more. I can tell you that office where he works does a lot of job, lot of work to promote the conference with the media. I know that they do that because I get messages and information from them. And so while he may not be in front of the camera, I certainly think that office does its best job that it can to try to help win this conference some favor. And certainly, I think the rankings this week should reflect that the ACC is in a much better position than the Big 12. And part of it is just the results, right? You've got 2 1-loss teams. And you've got one in Clemson who is right there with 2 losses to making the playoffs. So if they beat South Carolina this week, that is going to look really good for the ACC. If they lose to South Carolina this week and some other games go the other way, Louisville loses to Kentucky and Florida State loses to Florida, which I think we all kind of think is going to happen anyway. If the ACC loses a bunch of big matches with the SEC, then it just matters. I don't know what Jim Phillips could say at that point to help the ACC if his teams lose. So the ACC has to take care of its business on the field, and if they do, then I'm sure Jim Phillips will be one of the first people to point that out, either publicly or privately. All right, this is from 818 Cali Kane. Which tight end will be more impactful in this game, Elijah Arroyo or Rondé Gadsden? Carlos, what say you?
And my hope it's Elijah Arroyo. But who knows at this point? But I think OG's had a good season. The little OG, uh, he's a really good player. I wish he would come to Miami, but yeah, I think Elijah Arroyo has to be a big part of this offense moving forward. You saw what he did against Wake Forest when he gets the ball, what he's capable of, and the sort of mismatch that he can be against the defense, where you can take advantage of, a linebacker covering him or even a strong safety covering him. You can make plays with Elijah Arroyo and get big plays out of him. So I'm hoping it's Elijah Arroyo, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's around against.
Yeah, I don't know what the right answer is in responding to this other than to think that I think both of them will play a big role in this game for their offenses because Syracuse has other guys that can catch the football. Miami certainly has other guys that can catch the football. I gave you some important key stats in this game. I think I don't know how much time Gadsden actually spends blocking, which will probably make or break his NFL draft status, right? Because he plays tight end slash big receiver. I tend to think Gadsden is probably going to play a bigger role in this game than Arroyo, just because he is more of a matchup nightmare for Miami safeties than I think the other way around. Arroyo, he can be problematic too, but Justin Barron is a really good safety for Syracuse. I think he'll do a decent job on Arroyo trying to slow him down. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in this game. But I think both of them will be utilized. I don't think any of them are going to get ignored by any stretch. All right,
Well, I
this
think
one.
in Arroyo's case, although they've got really good safety play at Syracuse, the thing is they're going to want to stop the big play. So I think those safeties are going to be more involved in staying back, playing deeper coverage over the top, and ensuring that their corners don't get blown off the field,
Right.
which may open it up for Arroyo.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what happens in this game and how the chess pieces are moved around. Armando Izagiri, AY2 Mondo says the last time Miami won 11 games, I was 11 years old. I'm 32 now. How nervous should I be considering the last time we won 11 games, I was watching Brock Berlin? All yours, brother.
Ah, what's concerning to me is that you were 11 years old when that happened, and when Brock Berlin was playing quarterback, I was of legal drinking age, getting pounded. Wow, that was another terrible word choice. Pounding beers and alcohol at the Orange Bowl with my buddies legally, not underage. Um, you shouldn't be concerned, man. Enjoy it. Enjoy the ride. The moment is here. This is what you've been waiting for all your life, right? 20 years of
We lost
would
you,
win number
Carlos.
11 on Saturday. All
You
right, how
got
about
cut
now?
off
Can you
there
hear me?
for a second. We got you again. You got the signal back. But well, I agree. I think you got to enjoy the ride. Um, look, we had this conversation at the beginning of the season. I asked you if Miami finishes 10-2, but makes the ACC championship game, would you be happy? I asked you, what about if they go 11-1 and lose the conference, or do they have to win the conference? So it's right now you got all three options on the table. If Miami finishes 10-2, but loses a tough game at an 8-3 Syracuse, Carlos, let's say they lose on a last second touchdown or some heartbreaking fashion, how angry and hey, how much of a waste of a season is this? Do you say, or do you say, hey, this is only the second time in the last 20 years they've gotten to double-digit wins? What's your opinion on the result?
I think both can be expressed and felt at the same time. I'm happy that they got to the 10 win plateau. I think it's exciting that they've gotten there for the second time since 2002. But at the same time, it's a wasted opportunity with a player like Cam Ward. We anticipated coming into the season they should at least make the ACC title game. We've seen throughout the season we've thought they should win it, but it'll be disappointing if they don't at least get there.
I agree. I think at this point, you are, I think, an 8.5 point favorite at Syracuse. I know Syracuse is a good football team, but we've gone over the resume. This team can win against good football teams. They've done it 5 times in 6 tries. They went on the road and beat a good Louisville team. I think this Syracuse team is probably just as good as that Louisville team, in terms of what they do on offense, and their defense is not bad. They make enough plays certainly to win games. Make it another win. It's not easy to win a conference. You got to be able to win games like this. So.
Yep,
All
absolutely.
right. This is Javier B. J Boy 1724. He says, any word on Brown? And in your opinion, is the second half performance from the defense against Wake Forest sustainable? What is the key to that defensive success? And what is it going to be? Let's start on Damari Brown. As I correctly predicted, Carlos, none of the injured players that Mario Cristobal discussed returned against Wake Forest. I told you I have been schooled in the Butch Davis school of lying, so I know I can tell when a coach is BSing us. Mario has said this week in his press conference that he's hopeful that Damari Brown will be able to play in this game. So I'm just going to leave it at that. Damari Brown went through warmups against Wake Forest, was wearing a hoodie on the sideline for kickoff. When push comes to shove, are they going to throw him out there if he's healthy? Yes. I also think we are not in push comes to shove mode yet. As good as that pass offense is for Syracuse, the key to this game, I told you what it is. They've got to make Syracuse one-dimensional, not allow them to run the football at all, force Kyle McCord into mistakes, and you can do that without having a cornerback, a second-year cornerback who hasn't played since the Florida game.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, coming into this game in terms of the sustainability of the defense moving forward and playing like they did against Wake Forest, this is a different animal. Wake Forest didn't have a really good quarterback. Hank Bachmeier played crappy and hasn't been a really good quarterback all year. They also don't have the weapons on the outside to test that secondary, although they made a couple plays early on. I think this is going to be a great test of where this defense is because of the way Syracuse plays through Kyle McCord, how they throw the football, and they're going to attack. Their strength attacks Miami's biggest weakness on defense, which is that secondary. So, like you said, they've got to make them one dimensional. Defensive line is going to be critical again this week. They've got to get pressure on McCord. They got to sack him. They got to make him get rid of the football before he wants to, and help that secondary out.
Second part of this question, the second half performance against Wake Forest, is that sustainable? What is the key in this game? We just kind of went over that. I think is it sustainable? Yes. I think the Akeem Mesidor move outside and playing bigger, stronger defensive tackles does allow you to do that. You don't need to play the NASCAR package the whole game to be an effective pass rush team, especially now that we're starting to see Ruben Bain, I think, get his legs under him, so to speak, following the
Yeah,
injury. Um,
absolutely.
our, this from Andrew V17. Should there be any concern over the passing game? The stats are still there, but it doesn't look as crisp the last two games. Yeah, and we talked about this earlier. Cam Ward has to play smart, intelligent football. There is concern. Yes, they're not playing offensively the way that they have in the past. And I think as long as Cam Ward decides to you know, keep the cape off unless he really needs to, unless you're in the fourth quarter trailing or tied and you need a play. I think as long as he avoids doing that, this team is good enough to beat Syracuse without him being Superman.
Absolutely. And you've got to involve the tight ends and the running backs in the passing game. You've got to do more to get the ball to other guys to keep the offense moving and moving the chains.
Jordan Lyle has to get carries, I think, early in this game.
Oh yeah,
I, I think
yeah,
he showed you enough explosiveness in this last game, 115 yards on 7 touches. He showed you enough explosiveness where you get him in the first half. You don't save him for the second half. I think that's one wrinkle I would try to use a little bit more and maybe even getting the running backs more involved in the passing game. I thought Damian Martinez
yeah.
caught a pass in the flat, picked up a first down. Just get Damian Martinez in space. You don't need to put him behind the guards and wait for the hole to open up and then for him to decide when to hit it. Get him out in the flat. He's got good enough hands to catch the football. Jordan Lyle certainly does as well. He's a complete back. Let those guys out in space and let Cam Ward make the easy pass, not the 40-yard pass down the field.
Exactly. And I think the other thing that Jordan Lyle brings is, Mark Fletcher and Damian Martinez are both kind of similar in terms of how they play. Their build, they're more physical than Jordan Lyle. He's sort of a change of pace in terms of being that explosive back. And that I think is something else that adds another dimension is being able to mix in styles. When you've got the defense sort of prepared for those guys that are big time bulls and hammers, and then you mix in a lightning guy like Jordan Lyle, I think is a great way to keep the defense off balance.
All right, this is from Miami Hurricanes enthusiast in three very separate tiers. What does this team have to improve upon to one, beat Syracuse, two, beat SMU to win the ACC, and three, win the national title? One, to beat Syracuse, we've gone over it multiple times. Number two, to beat SMU. Uh, Look, I haven't done a full breakdown of SMU's weaknesses, but certainly, I think offensive balance is key in that game. They have some guys that can get after the quarterback, Jafari Harvey. They got other guys on that team, the linebacker position. They do a good job on defense. Their defense is pretty solid. So I don't think you again, it's to me it's giving Cam Ward options and not making him have to be the superhero every single game. That's the key to all three of those questions.
Yeah, and I think it's moving forward. It's going to be the same thing. Also, is to me they have to be dominant on both lines of scrimmage. They've got to
Yeah.
protect Cam Ward. They got to be able to run the football. And going into that game against SMU, they've got to stop the run. That's SMU is a run dominant team. They're a team that plays everything off the running game, whether it be with Rashard Smith or the quarterback Jennings in the run game. They do a lot of stuff in the run game that puts stress on the defense, and then they open it up with the passing game. They use play action and different sorts of schemes to try and get big plays out of it. So if you stop the run against them, then you control it.
Yep. All right. This one is from Ralphie Rodriguez, triple R Rod 54. Does Cam Ward make it to New York for the Heisman ceremony? And what rash actions are we prepared to take if he doesn't? I'll let you answer first.
Listen, I'm open to any sort of protest or any sort of rash activity if it promotes the right cause. But I don't know if it's necessary in this case. But hey, listen, at the end of the day, just enjoy what we got, man. Let's see, let's take it one step at a time here, and let's not start going crazy just before the prize is won.
Well, I'll say this. Yes, he will go to New York. I think at this point he's locked in a trip. But I, I hate to do the I told you so, Carlos. But I've said this. I said it before it happened. I've said it after it happened. I said Miami had to go undefeated in the regular season and win the ACC for Cam Ward to have a chance to win the Heisman. I said, people said, well, what about other awards, making All Americans? Yes, that's the standard Miami is held up to because they have not done shit in 20 years. So the national narrative of the Miami Hurricanes is they're going to choke it away. That's what everybody thinks Miami is going to do. And the moment they choked it away against Georgia Tech and lost that game, they hurt themselves for all major awards. People are angry. Why isn't Xavier Restrepo up for the Bolitnikoff Award? Why are other guys getting shunned for awards? I told you they have to do something special to get the benefit of the doubt from voters. And I think there is a natural inclination. Okay. And nobody has been a bigger proponent of me saying this in the last 20 years than me. Miami has a lot of haters out there nationally. I am part of the national media and I see it with my own eyes all the time. And I point it out to people and I say it. And, you know, the bottom line is it's something that Miami has to overcome. They won five national championships. People hated them when they won. People hate them now when they lose. It's just part of the world. You are the New York Yankees of college football in a lot of ways. People love to hate you.
Yeah, and tell you what, I would prefer him not to even get to New York and use that as motivation. And number two, when the Hurricanes have had Heisman winners and finalists, how many national championships have they
It doesn't happen.
won? None, none, none.
Does
Testaverde won the Heisman, shit the bed in the national title game, right?
Yep.
Soretta won the Heisman, they got destroyed by Alabama. McGahee and Ken Dorsey went to New York, we lost to Ohio State. Guess what? Keep Cam Ward in Miami and let's go win a national title. I'll trade the Heisman for a title.
This is from Chris and Krista Los Farringtons on Twitter. He says Georgia will lose the SEC championship and get into the playoff with three losses over two-loss Clemson. All right, I believe it. I think Georgia's getting into the playoff no matter what. They
Yeah.
are getting to the SEC championship game. I think as long as they beat Georgia Tech this week, they are in. There's no doubt Georgia will be in the field. All right, and then let's see. Last question here from Veconomics. Who do you got in an SMU UM ACC final? If that happens, Carlos, who are you taking right now on paper?
I'm going with the Canes. I'm going with the Canes just because they will have the best player on the field, and that counts for something.
Um, I love the confidence, but I would say SMU is playing better football right now in the second half of the season than Miami is. And I think until I see Miami play a complete game, not just a half, I will not feel good going into that game because I think Rhett Lashley's team is playing better than Miami is right now.
I agree. They're playing very well, and they're very well coached. But again, when you have the best player on the field, there's an opportunity for magic every time. right? There's an opportunity for that guy to put the cape on, like you said. And if he's able to not just put the cape on, but make the simple plays and get this offense rolling efficiently down the stretch, I think they have a shot at being special.
We will see what happens. We will be back with more wide right after Thanksgiving tomorrow. Carlos, we will be back with more wide right following that Syracuse game on Saturday. Signing day is next week, December 4th. Transfer portal opens December 8th. So things are going to get busy, especially for me with the athletic and writing and working. I will not be going to Syracuse for this game, thankfully. My daughter has a big soccer tournament this weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So I will be busy. What are you eating for Thanksgiving, Carlos? What is your meal? Mario Cristobal says his favorite is picadillo. What are you eating for
Yeah,
Thanksgiving?
that was just a ridiculous pull an answer out of your ass type thing from Mario. Damn well, he just needs picadillo on Thanksgiving. Okay, he knows he's got the pierna rolling. He's got the black beans, the rice, maybe a little turkey on the side. That's generally how I do it on Thanksgiving. We both go to both turkey and lechon. For me, I'm a stuffing guy. I really like good stuffing. My wife makes awesome stuffing, not the stovetop stuff, like the real stuff. She makes it, and she makes a great turkey. But this year, the in-laws wanted to do something different. They didn't want to have any turkey. They didn't want to have a big celebration. And my family was doing some other things, so we decided to come to the Keys, and we'll probably be eating some fish.
All right, do it a little different style. I like it. I am doing the traditional meal here at home with the wife and kids, and the in-laws and the sister-in-laws that will be coming over as well. So I think ham, turkey, all the traditional. Put it in the oven, heat it
Beans,
up.
potatoes, beans, man.
All of that stuff. I'm looking for. I enjoy a good ham on Thanksgiving. We will see how it tastes, but I'm looking forward to the food. Looking forward to being spending some time with the family, and hope you guys have a good one, brother.
You too, man. Hopefully, I'll be eating some mahi for Thanksgiving. If not, maybe some grouper. A mutton snapper would be fantastic. But if not, there's always Publix.
Well, enjoy the break. Hopefully Saturday Miami takes care of business, and I'm not writing about the disappointment of a 10-2 season and not getting to the ACC championship or the college football playoff. Hopefully the Hurricanes, win or lose, play a quality game and perform well. And I'm not writing about, hey, not being able to step up in a big moment. So uh for those of you who are tuned in, make sure you subscribing to the Wide Right podcast and to the Athletic. Make sure you follow Carlos MIA Ledo on Twitter. And are you going to be putting out a podcast yourself, or is this it for you this week?
Yeah, I'm not doing anything, bro. I haven't put out a podcast in a few weeks, and I sure as shit am not going to do it this week when I'm in the Keys. I may just put a Twitter picture or an X picture on X of me drinking a beer or a nice cocktail by the water.
All right. Enjoy the keys. We will talk next week, man.
Peace.